Hey everybody, welcome back to the Live Ultralight podcast powered by Outdoor Vitals. If you are new to the podcast, this podcast is all about getting you outdoors more comfortably, more confidently, and therefore, hopefully, more consistently. Today, we have a very special episode, one that I think you guys will really enjoy because you guys really enjoy our product deep dive episodes. And in this one, it's not so much a product deep dive, but it is going to be a full-on sneak peek of an upcoming product that we internally call this the CS40. And I think this will be the title of it outside the company as well. But we're very excited to give you guys a few details, talk about the backstory of a brand new backpack in our line. So on the episode today, we have Brigham, our product designer, and Derek, our director of marketing, to share a few sneak peek pieces of information on this. We're also going to be doing a giveaway of this backpack. If you win the giveaway, you'll actually get your backpack a little bit before everyone else, but it will be this is a valuable backpack. We're not going to share prices just yet, but just know this is a very valuable giveaway. So stay tuned for the details on how you can be entered into the giveaway at the end of this episode. So with that, how are you guys doing today?
Doing awesome. I'm pumped about this.
It's been a long time coming, Brigham. It's probably no secret that you love designing backpacks, and so does this mean we are dropping the Shadowlight? Are we done with the Shadowlight, or
Nope.
What does it mean?
It just means we're adding another backpack to our backpacking line, and hopefully, appealing to more people. I think that's really what it comes down to, is just putting out another good product that is going to be attractive and suit the needs of people in a different way than maybe the Shadowlight does.
Yeah, the Shadowlight's been an incredibly good seller for us. It's been one of our best-selling products for years now. And the feedback's always been great on it. It's been a phenomenal product, but we've never wanted to be a single backpack company. But backpacks take some serious time and development to get right. So, I don't know. How much after even releasing the Shadowlight did you start to work on this project, Brigham?
Well, it wasn't that long. Especially in terms of mind work, I would say. But just in terms of like allocation of resources towards projects, it might have been like a few months, not long.
We didn't rest long, for sure.
No.
And I think from the beginning you were always kind of mapping out concepts. I think you didn't share concepts with me for a little while after the Shadowlight, but when you did share, you're like, I've been thinking for a while we need to do this, by the time you brought it up to me. But we always knew that we'd have multiple products, backpacks in our line. And so this is going to be a fun one. You guys have probably seen also for a while us talking a little bit even about our fast packs. You've seen some documentaries out about our fast packs. But we've been designing this just as long, if not longer, than the fast pack in all reality. But we've kept it a little bit more close to the vest, a little bit more secretive, if you can say that. So, we're gonna pull back the curtain just a little bit on the fact that we do have another framed backpack in the works, and we'll give you some high-level concepts on that. So, do you want to start? Where do you guys want to start today? Do you guys want to start with talking about kind of the concept behind this pack? Or do you guys rather start by talking about backstory of use cases?
Well, one thing that you'll often hear Brigham say around here at the office is that we never intended this for one backpack to be the meets all requirements backpack. That's never been the case, and one thing that I'm really excited about with this new CS40 Ultra backpack is just the use case scenario on this, what it was designed for, how we came up with it, how we discovered what the needs really are. That the Shadowlight, while it is an amazing backpack, there's still some things that it was not designed to do in the first place that the CS40 is. And I think that's one of the things that I'm most excited about getting into.
Yeah, so let's start there. Let's start with kind of the general design concept, Brigham, of what the CS40 is and who it's for.
That's good. Yeah. Conceptually, let's kind of start with some like the basics in terms of our thought process or our philosophy in what a backpacking backpack, like almost by default, should have or do. And we've talked about it before. Same thing as like with our Shadowlight backpack is, we, in terms of it, let's call it a backpacking backpack. So this isn't, we're not talking about like a fast pack or like something meant for running, but, a backpack. We generally, believe that we want, and the best way of making a comfortable backpack is by having good stability, support, and load transfer. So there's a few things that almost inherently requires, things like a comfortable supportive hip belt, an adequate pack height that includes a support structure. That's generally referred to as a frame or an internal frame. But what that support structure does is it stabilizes the load and it transfers the weight most effectively and efficiently to the hips, which are a more suitable over long duration platform to carry weight other than your shoulders. So those are kind of like the general broad concepts of like where we're working around when we're approaching a new backpacking pack. Comfort, stability, support, and load transfer. Other general things that are directed to like load transfer and support, when I mentioned like a proper height of backpack, a hip belt will carry a lot of weight, but it won't do it as efficiently if the weight isn't efficiently transferred. And that takes place via a support structure that is tall enough that it extends above the shoulders so that you can have load lifter straps that basically relieve pressure from the tops of the shoulder, and that pressure equates to compression of the spine. And so those load lifter straps, they have to be placed at an angle that's higher or at a placement that's higher than the shoulder so that they have an upward angle so that when you tension them, it physically is lifting almost, it's removing weight from the top of your shoulders and your spine, and then it's traveling down the support structure of the backpack to where it's anchored at the hips. So that's kind of what we're working around when approaching, in our minds, a proper backpacking pack.
So on that note, critical pieces of that are how it's tying in to the hip belt, that it is extending above the shoulder, your shoulders as well. Those basically have to be in place for it to properly transfer the load down into the hips, where it's not compressing your spine or weighing in on your shoulders over time, right? Hypothetically, if you had a support structure or frame that was lower than your shoulders or even equal to your shoulders, the only transfer really that can happen in that point is straight back. But that doesn't actually take the load off of your shoulders. All it really is going to be able to do is provide maybe some more structure to the backpack.
Yeah, structure and stability. And then you're just going to get a much more there's going to be more weight emphasis on your upper torso than your hips because the weight, you're hanging weight off your body. That's essentially what the suspension of a backpack does. Your shoulder straps is you're placing weight and it's being held by the shoulder straps. And so gravity takes the effect of the bag and pulls it down and away. And so your shoulder straps hold it up so it doesn't fall to the ground. Now, at some point, a hip belt will carry some of that weight, but it's much more comfortable over a long duration. There's much less fatigue on your shoulders and back if you can transfer the majority of the weight to the hips. So that's kind of like the basics of what we design a backpack around.
I think that's a really good background on the mindset we have when we're designing packs and how important it is to us getting out on the trail and knowing how important that load transfer is. It's just so important for for comfort. The Shadowlight that we've already had out for multiple years, as you mentioned, does that really well. The CS40 does as well. So maybe let's spend some time talking about what's different about the CS40 and why we're so excited about a whole new pack.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, when we got to actually kind of refining what this backpack would be, and again, we mentioned it earlier, we wanted to kind of reach new, more users, right? So if the Shadowlight, let's just say that if the Shadowlight doesn't check all the boxes for some people, you know, we feel like we can check some more boxes with this pack, that there's people out there that are going to prefer this more than the other. And, you know, some of the goals were to make a backpack that would do that. There's some of the things would be like, not goal number one. It wasn't necessarily to make the lightest weight backpack possible, but knowing that there's a lot of backpackers out there that are very experienced. They consistently, you know, have no problem, you know, achieving like a really low base weight, you know, a 10-pound, 9-pound, 11-pound base weight. That they've been doing it long enough that they know exactly what they're taking. They have their system really well dialed in. They have a process for covering their miles in the mountains or on the trails. And so this backpack is more catered to those people that they know exactly how they pack. They know exactly what they pack. They're covering lots of miles. And so that kind of like those parameters start to shape the backpack design a bit in terms of like features or, you know, lack of pockets and things like that. And it becomes a very minimalist pack, which is really easy to do. It's really easy to make a minimalist pack. But going back to kind of the background, or like kind of the foundational principles of what we think a backpack should do and be, that's where a lot of the design effort went into was, okay, really easy to make a minimalist pack, but it's got to be really comfortable for long, you know, 20 to 30 mile days, you know, a lot of physical effort where potentially there's going to be more water carrying involved, multi-days of food involved. So just making the most lightweight minimalist pack isn't going to cut it. It's just got to be comfortable for the long haul.
I think the best way to like sum that up is that it's a little more streamlined than the Shadowlight. It's got a little bit less organization per se in it, and it's just a little bit more trimmed down so that it can be a little bit more of a faster, lighter pack per se. For some people, that's a benefit, right? Because they've already got their systems down, like Brigham has mentioned, and it you know, obviously with that too, it typically means that we're going to be able to shave off a little bit of weight off of the pack to boot. So yeah, I mean, I think that the goal here, as far as like a high level concept of what this backpack is the Shadowlight. We really tried to build a pack that was ultralight, sub 2 pounds, but that still had a lot of features and options in the pack, so that you could, you know, store things in their own compartments, like on the 2 upper pockets on the Shadowlight, on the 2 side upper pockets, or to have 2 mesh pockets in the back, or to have the center zipper. This kind of gives you a little bit more of an ability to customize or organize. With the CS40, this one is a little bit more geared around you doing your own organization inside the pack, or having one larger back mesh pocket to stuff things into. But again, you know, for us, the concept here is there's already some packs out there like this. So what makes us unique to us, what makes us unique is the fact that we do have a phenomenal load transfer system, suspension system. You know, we're not using a minimalist hip belt. We're using a very comfortable hip belt that's going to hug your hips and be able to carry that weight on your hips. We're using a frame that is tall enough to support that, and then we're tying that all in with an ultralight streamlined bag is attached to it per se.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that we had to approach or face really is like, okay, well, it's going to end up being a lighter weight pack, but it's not going to end up being lighter weight because we sacrificed in terms of materials or anything that's going to decrease the durability of the pack. I mean, that was another important part of this development was, well, if we're going to make the pack lighter, it probably will require more than just not having a center zipper and deleting 2 pockets. So we actually looked around quite extensively for the right materials. And so we ended up landing on some very, very advanced materials that have incredible durability and strength to weight. We'll provide more details on this later. We don't want to leave you fully satiated after this podcast, but
well, I think
to say, yeah, we had to really seek out materials to make the pack that were above and beyond essentially what we already have in terms of strength, durability, and weight.
I think another thing just to note with this on a high-level concept still is that this pack was, and we say this a lot with price points, that we don't design for price points, but we definitely leaned into that more with this pack, knowing that the target end user for high-level concept is someone who likely will be a thru-hiker, likely will be putting a lot of mileage on this pack that needs it to be both durable and comfortable and lightweight and streamlined. And so in order to accomplish all of those, that means that this pack fundamentally with materials and things that we're going to use to accomplish those things is going to be, on the higher end of price point for us to build, as well as what that's going to equate to customers. Now, thanks to our direct-to-consumer business model, it's still very, very competitive where this price will land. But just know from a concept level, we did, nothing was off the table in terms of what we were willing to put into this pack, because we are, in our minds, designing this pack for extremes, super focused on performance. And a good case study for that was, and one of the best R&D trips that we got with this pack during design was last year on the Uinta Highline Trail. So for those of you that don't know, we will be releasing a documentary on this within about a month of this podcast coming out, and you will get a lot of sneak peeking at the backpack at that point, because I believe all of us were wearing different versions. Now, there was a couple different colors and things like that.
Yeah, you'll see different prototype iterations. So it's definitely not the final version. So there's probably 2 or 3 different stages of development between all the packs that we're using.
Yeah. And like I say, pay no mind to the color. If you want to see close-ups or anything or any kind of sneak peeks like that, you can find that. Would that be in the membership sneak peek preview?
Well, right now on our website, you can go to packs, just our packs collection in our regular website, and you can see a picture of that. Now, you won't be able to see very much unless you are a Live Ultralight member. As a Live Ultralight member, you do get sneak peeks to upcoming products, and the CS40 is one of those. You'll be able to see a little bit more as a member, but anyone can go and see at least a picture of what this pack is going to look like, and I'm pretty excited about it. You can count this episode as our official announcement that the CS40 will be coming this year. No, it is not on sale yet. We will be actually doing a pre-sale this year, but you should start looking at it, start getting excited now, because we anticipate these to go pretty quickly.
Yeah, we will be doing the pre-sale and shipping them this year. So it's not a pre-sale to ship next year or anything like that, but that'll all be made public in a month or so from now. So definitely be on the look, and if you do want to see that, you can see that there. But in that Uinta Highline trip, going back to that, you're going to be able to see the pack. You're going to be able to see it in the field and whatnot. But that trip in and of itself was a good example of what this pack would be designed for. I actually went back and looked at this. We were averaging 23 miles a day on our days that we were doing full days. We did have 2 half days, even though they really weren't half days. We still did like 18 and 20 miles on our half days.
Right.
We were pushing the envelope for sure, but very fast, very streamlined, and we're in really rugged country. Like every time you put your pack down, it's getting set down on sharp rocks, granite, rough materials. We're above 10,000 feet. So and then going through big, huge passes. And so it's very high strenuous, high altitude, which means that we can't be packing big, heavy packs through this and covering this many miles, or the exertion would likely not allow us to either cover those miles, or would put ourselves at a much higher risk for overexerting and elevation sickness, things like that. And so with this particular trip, we're all packing very streamlined. We're packing at about that 10-pound base weight, all of us. We are carrying a little bit of camera gear, but then we have to have 5 days worth of food. And for many of us, as you'll learn in the documentary, we actually had 6 days worth of food, just in case we needed to bleed over into the next day to finish out the trail. So in this case of a scenario, that's just a great example of what this is built for. This is a high exertion, high performance trip. You need the durability to be there. You can't have your gear fail because you're in the middle of a wilderness. And at the very best, to get off this trail, you're looking at a potential 12-mile pack out if you can get someone to come to a trailhead and pick you up in the middle of nowhere. And so it's just higher risk per se, where you really need the pack to perform. You really need to be streamlined. You really need to have your systems dialed. And it was a great testing trip.
It was. For me, it's like, it's hard to beat that trip for testing and feedback of a fairly developed stage. Meaning, like, we'd gone through multiple iterations before then, been on multiple trips, lots of miles prior to this, but at least it was now to where, one, I was confident that like the pack would be fine, even though it's still a prototype, different stages of development for everybody's packs, that it would be fine and do the job. But like, there's certain things that you don't feel after 10 miles that you feel after 20. And same thing, on like, the third consecutive day of doing 20 plus miles, things affect the body differently, and the backpack, in my opinion, should be like considered part of the body. So, great testing grounds and scenario there to get a lot of testing and good feedback.
If you guys want to see a little bit more of different places that we've tested the CS40, like Tayson mentioned, we've had this in the works for a while now. You can actually go to our YouTube channel, Outdoor Vitals, and see some of our other past videos of different trips and start seeing some sneak peeks. If you haven't noticed it already, it does pop up here and there on different trips. And then in a few weeks or within the month, watch out for that Uinta Highline documentary. There's going to be a lot of scenes that will show that pack very clearly.
So Brigham and I had already been testing and going through iterations at this point, but that trip for you, Derek, was probably your first time putting one on and really putting any miles on the trail, right?
No, it wasn't my first time. I'd had it on a few trips before that.
Okay.
But definitely that was the longest trip that I'd had the CS40 on.
Okay. So in your mind, putting that pack on and covering miles, what were the things that jumped out to you that were different per se from the Shadowlight?
Well, one of the biggest things that, you notice right up front is that mesh pocket that's on the back. The Shadowlight has 2 deep stretch mesh pockets on either side of a center zip that goes all the way down the backpack. And that's good and bad for some people on the Shadowlight, depending on what your preference is and how you pack. The CS40 just has one very large stretch mesh pocket. And that was something that I really utilized and enjoyed on Uinta Highline this year. Being able to put things in the back there that needed to dry, or if there were layers that I needed to grab throughout the day, if it's maybe going to have some rain later, it'd be great to just put my rain jacket back there where it was easily accessible. And that's one thing that really stood out to me that was different. The other thing was the capacity. This pack is not designed to fit, anything and everything plus the kitchen sink. It's not a huge pack as far as capacity goes. But I did find that what we've been saying this whole time, what Tayson and Brigham has mentioned, rang true. if you know your gear and you know what you need and you've got your base weight pretty dialed in, you had more than enough space for the trip. And so on this particular trip throughout the Uinta Highline, I was paying attention to that specifically and how I felt about just the amount of space I had. And I did find that at this point where I'm at with backpacking, I did not need any more. I didn't need any more space, even with 6 days worth of food in that pack along with my base weight gear. So
what about like we've really been known for, the Shadowlight's really known for its comfort. It's comfort on trail, its load carry. Any differences in how this one carried for you?
Yeah, actually. I did enjoy the CS40 a little bit more. I love the Shadowlight. It's a really comfortable pack. But the CS40, I think, is a little bit next level for me as far as comfort. I really enjoyed the hip belts on the CS40. One thing is I don't really have a huge hip or waist size, and I was always feeling like I was maxing out other hip belts. And this one I actually was able to have a
I think we should rephrase that to minning out. You weren't necessarily
I was maxing it out. Minning
is that
out,
a word?
Is that a
minning
word?
out the hip belt?
This one I felt like we had enough versatility and adjustability in the hip belts and in the shoulder straps with the load lifters that I could really dial in the fit really, really well. And I think just the way that the foam sat and the shape of the shoulder straps in general, I don't know right now if I could really pin it down to any one thing, but I do think that overall I was pretty impressed with how comfortable the shoulder strap and hip belt system work together.
Yeah. I think for me, what I'll just add on to what Derek just said right there is we did a lot of prototypes with the shoulder straps, harnesses, I came back to Brigham a lot of times. I'm sure he was getting sick of me saying, I can still feel a little bit here, a little bit there. And I mean, we just micro adjusted this harness in to be incredibly, incredibly comfortable. But one of the things that I noticed right away going from the Shadowlight to this one was the frame itself and how it rode. And the frame is different. It's not the same as the Shadowlight. And it gives you a different feel per se. And I really like the feel of this particular frame, the way that it kind of molds to the body, the amount of give versus stiffness to me is really dialed in, and I really enjoy just the comfort of the stiffness of the frame and or the comparing it to the Shadowlight, maybe the lack of stiffness. I don't know how to say that properly, but it's got the right amount of give, and I noticed that. I think that's something that the users will pick up almost right away is how well it load transfers, but isn't overly aggressive, if that makes sense.
The balance is different on the load transfer and the frame stiffness.
One thing also that I just wanted to point out here, I'm going to take a side tangent for just a second. If you look at and if you listen to, at least this has been my experience, and add in here if I'm going off wrong, you feel like, one of the main reasons people don't use a frame is, to them, they cut out another 6 or 8 ounces out of a backpack. It's just unneeded weight is what a lot of them will chalk it up to. I'm gonna put an argument in here for two different things in our philosophy with design. Number one, if your previous backpack was using a frame that was not actually giving you any load transfer and it was just adding a little bit of rigidity to the backpack per se, then yeah, that wasn't really helping you anyways. So you may as well pull the frame out, in my opinion. Like if I'm using a backpack with, say, like an 18-inch frame with my torso height, that's going to give me 0 load lifting ability. It's going to give me 0 transfer of weight off of my shoulders down to my hips. And so all then it's going to do is really give me a little bit of rigidity in the back panel of the backpack. But to me, I feel like I can pack my pack well enough to build in rigidity without that. So for me, if I have an 18-inch frame on my backpack, yeah, I'm going to toss it out. I'm not going to use it. It's an extra 5 or 6 ounces or whatever it is in my backpack. So that's kind of myth number one I would bust with going to a frameless pack. Now, I'm not going to say frameless are off limits or anything like that because, look, our fast pack does not have a frame, right? But it's a different design. But the other thing to me is then that concept of like, oh, I saved 5 ounces with the frame. And I would argue that a lot of frames are not that much weight. You might know this off the top of your head, Brigham. What is our Shadowlight?
So Shadowlight frame is it's basically like 3.7 ounces, and it's a very effective frame. Honestly, I'm pretty ignorant to the weights of competitive frames out there. Might as well just say it's probably middle of the road. There might be something out there that might be an ounce or two heavier. There might be something that might be an ounce lighter.
So keep that in mind. Under 4 ounces for the Shadowlight frame. And do we have a ballpark estimate on this frame?
Yeah.
It's lighter. We'll just say it's lighter, I guess, for now.
Yeah,
or
it's lighter.
It's even lighter than the Shadowlight frame. So let's just say, I'm guessing sub 3 ounces would be safe to say for now.
Generalized. Yeah, if you were to, let's say, by the time you eat 2 Cliff Bars, you will have accounted for the weight.
That's a nice cryptic.
Of our frame.
Kids Cliff Bars or full-size Cliff Bars?
By the time you take a sip of water out of your water bottle, you will have accounted for the weight of the frame.
So I just wanted to kind of talk about those two aspects of going frameless versus framed. Because in a backpack like this, for instance, the frame is adding so little weight. But then again, the whole purpose of a frame is to load transfer. So keep those in mind as you are maybe backpack shopping or looking around. But that is really something that rings true to us, is the need for a frame and the need for it to work as a frame should work. And really the lack of penalty per se in having a frame. Now, I guess if you get real nitpicky, there might be a few other weight costs. You do have to sew in a small webbing channel to have a frame. So there may be a few added ounces, 1 or 2 added ounces to have a webbing channel for that. But overall, it's a tiny sacrifice in weight, tiny, in order to load transfer and carry a backpack at a much more comfortable ability to carry that weight. And so again, for us, when we're doing something such as this Uinta Highline Trail, look, we're starting with 5 days worth of food. It's a significant amount of food. That's 10 plus pounds worth of food typically, plus your gear, plus your water. So now you're into the 20-pound range with your starting weight on a trail. And you're going to feel that, especially when, our first half day on trail, we started at almost noon. We still covered 18 miles. So there's still a lot of time on feet, still a lot of mileage that you're covering, which for us is, again, why it's critical to have a frame and to stay really comfortable. But we are limiting the weight of those frames. And with the CS40, I love that it's not overly stiff, but it is great at transferring that weight down. It's just such a great balance. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Where else do we want to go? Any other backstory aspects of maybe testing or creating this pack?
Well, in terms of testing, you mentioned something that I enjoy talking about. Like when you mentioned the shoulder straps, when we prototype packs, it's like one of those not so pleasant but enjoyable challenges. Like for me, at least. For example. Essentially, Tayson was the only one that persistently had slight reservations about the shoulder strap curvature. So I never had any issues with the shoulder strap. I don't know about Derek if you did or not. There was maybe Tyler did with one iteration, but then after the next iteration and the next iteration, essentially it was really only Tayson. So kind of let's just say within the office guys that had extensive use of the pack, it was 1 out of the 5 people was having an issue. Well, that's an interesting challenge because you're dealing with something that works for most people already. And if you're changing something, you can't change it in a way that now makes it not work for any of those other people, but also works for the person that's having some difficulties with it. So, that's what goes into it in terms of minor tweaks. You have to make incremental changes so that you don't go too far one way or the other. But that's kind of one little bit of background on some of the testing and design, is that there was there was a lot of effort put into making sure the shoulder straps were comfortable for, everybody that was able to test it versus, everybody except one. So that's really reassuring, putting a product out there that there wasn't really any reservations between anybody that tested it. So
I just want to confirm that. Tayson, so did you ever become satisfied?
Yes. So I think that's the whole point of kind of where Brigham was taking that too, is that we were able to do these micro adjustments, iteration after iteration after iteration, to fix it so that not 4 out of 5 people were comfortable with the harness. And I'm not saying I was uncomfortable. I found it as comfortable as anyone else's backpacks. But wanting this to be a premium, top of the charts carrying pack, I'm saying I'm getting a little bit of discomfort here after X amount of miles. We were able to do these micro adjustments, iteration after iteration after iteration, to the point that it did take care of those issues for me and eliminate those. So now that we've, instead of 4 out of 5 that are comfortable with the pack, we're 5 out of 5. And that's just the people that spent extensive miles with the pack per se. But so it did solve it for me, and it was no easy task, like Brigham said, because you got to micro adjust it in a way that helps the 5th person but doesn't hurt the 4 people before it. So, and I think that's why I've got a closet full of CS40 prototypes at my house now, and scattered around the office, because we do have to go through a lot of iterations. I think it's very easy for a company to say, we've built a backpack, we roughly know how to do this, we can kind of take previous artwork from this backpack and apply it to this backpack and just roll with it and cut the design process shorter. But I would say that's something we definitely did not do with this backpack. It is a full redesign. It has a different back panel. It does not have a removable back panel. There's another little sneak peek I guess I'll give for you. And so it is not using prior artwork, say of the Shadowlight, which means that we're doing a full redesign, and we're not just quickly tossing this through a design platform. In our minds, we would have wanted to release this backpack last year, but that's not how our timelines work. We don't have, say, retail stores saying, hey, we need this next year's model now on this specific date. For us, it doesn't work that way. The backpack is ready when the backpack is ready, and it's ready now. So it did take us a lot of iterations. It took a lot of fine tuning, but the finished product is really exciting.
So by now, I'm sure you've all noticed we've been pretty intentful about, I don't know, is intentful a word? Intentional. There we go. About not releasing too much information. There's a reason for that. So, like we mentioned before, the CS40 is not available yet. It will be soon. So, if you're at all interested in learning more about this, keep your eye out over the next few weeks. We will have another podcast go out that does dive really deep into the materials, the design, everything that you might want to know about the CS40 backpack. So make sure you keep your eye out for that. Don't get disheartened because we haven't, answered all your questions just yet. We will. I promise we will.
And you will answer some of your own questions when you watch some of these videos. We didn't specifically say what the fabric is, but I can almost guarantee that some of you will start calling it out when you see it too. On the videos that are coming out, videos that are already out, or on the sneak peek page.
Absolutely. Yep. So make sure you keep your eye out, like I said, both for the Highline video that will come out really soon, and then again in a number of weeks for another podcast episode that will go into all the details. In the meantime, go to the website, check it out. You can see a picture at the very least of the CS40, what it looks like, and get excited for it. It will go on pre-sale soon. And it will also be shipping within this year, so before the fall.
Yeah, I think we can give them we can upgrade the hope just a little bit more. So I anticipate, I think it's reasonable to expect the pre-sale to go on in May, and it's not a long delivery time. So don't be thinking oh, maybe Christmas. No, it'll probably be late summer, 2-3 months after the pre-sale starts. Should be getting backpacks on your doorstep.
Yeah.
So we did mention a giveaway at the beginning of the podcast as well.
Well, I wanted to ask Brigham one last thing.
Okay.
Before we get to that, related to design and the amount of time and effort that went into this. How many different shoulder strap cuts and structures do you think you put into this pack? Because there was times when you would design one and prototype it, and it would come with two different harnesses. This prototype would have this harness, this prototype would have this harness. To me, I felt like it was almost 10 different harnesses.
There's probably at least 10. If you were to just take 10 of the backpacks and line them up and stand about 10 feet away, you probably wouldn't even be able to tell the difference. But if you were to take my design files and overlay each strap over itself, and then put that on the back panel file, then you would see these little tweaks of angles, curvature, where a curvature starts or ends, where the sewing angle goes into the back panel.
How close or how wide they sew into the back panel.
Yeah. So there's at least 10.
Yeah, I think that I just wanted to highlight that before we get into this giveaway, because there is just so much that we prioritize focusing on with this pack, with all of our products here. Because to us, backpack is a extremely pivotal part of your system. I mean, it's kind of like the core piece of a system. You're wearing it for 8 to 10 hours a day at times, loaded with weight in it. It can be...
The whole activity is named after that one piece of gear. We're going backpacking. Yeah. We're not going sleeping bagging.
Right.
That's what I'm going to start calling campers, sleeping baggers. No, I mean, it is. It's a core piece, and putting extra time and energy and attention into a backpack pays big dividends in our minds, in comfort, in what it delivers, what it offers, your happiness on trail, what you're willing to do, right? I mean, think about the people that only hike, and I'm not saying this is bad or anything. I'm just saying, let's say you're someone who's only hiking 10 miles a day, or 5 miles a day. Like, so much of that can be tracked down to comfort and why you wouldn't maybe hike farther. And I can think back to when I was a kid, when I was in Boy Scouts. I literally remember this one time that all I had to do was hike about a half of a mile from a car to a campsite with my backpack on. And this backpack, it wasn't a backpacking trip. I was literally just carrying my stuff to the campground that you couldn't drive to. And I had a framed backpack, and it was loaded. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was loaded, and there was stuff hanging off every side. That was one of the most painful half miles of walking I've ever experienced in my entire life. I remember my shoulders were just getting cut into. They're extremely painful. The hip belt was not fitting me very well. The frame was actually poking into me. I mean, it was one of the most uncomfortable experiences I've ever had in my life, and I only had to go a half of a mile. And so, the flip-flop side of that is to have a frame and a backpack that molds so well to your body that it feels like it's an extension of your body. And that was and is the goal for any of our backpacks, and especially is we're getting closer to perfection with the CS40. And the harness, the hip belt, the structure, the frame, all of that, and trying to encapsulate this perfect concept of feeling like this is a extension of your body, not an appendage of your body that's not comfortable, that's jabbing into you, painful. And that's why we go through 10 harnesses in a single product testing cycle.
Yeah, that's actually something I've been thinking about during this podcast is, kind of like why go through all of this. Of course, we want you to be comfortable, but if you think about kind of the opposite of comfortable, it's uncomfortable. And in terms of the scale of uncomfortable, there's discomfort, and then on the other side, there's pain. That entire range from discomfort to pain it's all fatiguing on some scale. And that's literal. That is an energy consumption factor. So having discomfort puts a more energy tax on your body, and being in pain puts an exponentially higher energy tax on your body. And a great example of this is last year when we did the rim to rim to rim. That day one, I hurt my knee like 9 miles into a 38-mile day. And that's like, so what that meant was me moving along at like a snail's pace. I mean, I finished that day 6 hours later than I would have, than most other people did. So if I'm not really physically exerting myself because I'm moving so slow, essentially I was like, my heart rate was hardly anything, but at the end of the day, I felt like absolutely smoked. I mean, I was so exhausted, and that it was from the like extreme pain that I was like going through with each and every step. Every time I had to lift that left leg up, step over like a 2-inch tall rock, like it was excruciating. And that pain was like way more fatiguing than had I just been running the whole time. And that was very noticeable.
Gait. It's going to alter your gait, how you step, which then impacts every other muscle in your body and every other fatigue in your body.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you guys have ever backpacked even where you have to like hold your backpack up with your hands or like push forward the straps or like that's all extra energy and expenditure that stacks up over in this case, a 38-mile day.
Yeah.
But it all comes at a cost. You know, any discomfort can become a pain, but any discomfort or pain can also be fatiguing as well and cost your trip in some way, shape, or form. So it is critical. We do think that that's why we put so much attention into the designs and the focus on a backpack.
Which has sort of a little bit of a bonus while we're on that topic. We have mentioned our Fastback that we are also working on currently. No, it's not released yet either, but during that fastbacking trip through the Grand Canyon, we did film that and create another documentary, which is currently available for you to watch. So if you haven't watched it already, you can go find that on YouTube. It's called Rim to Rim to Rim. And you can see what Brigham's talking about. You can kind of see what happened to Brigham and other members of the team and kind of the effects that had on the overall adventure. So make sure you go and check that out and get a sneak peek at some of the prototypes of that Fastpack.
Yeah, yeah. If you're someone who totally disagreed with my thoughts on framed versus unframed, then stick around for the Fastpack. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the giveaway. Yeah. So it's been a long time coming since we've done a giveaway on the podcast, and since we've asked you guys to do reviews for a giveaway. So this is what we're doing. We're going to give you a CS40. One of the most expensive pieces that we will have on the website when we do release the price. You'll be able to win this. You'll be able to get it shipped out a little bit ahead of everyone else when these are released if you go and write a review for the podcast. So go into whatever platform you use, whether that's iTunes or Spotify or wherever your platform of choice. Write us a review. We're not saying write us a 5-star review. Write us an honest review. And you guys will be entered into the giveaway for a CS40. First, we'll call it the first one out, the first CS40 out of Outdoor Vitals. So, if you guys want to win a CS40, or maybe you could even twist Eric's arm and get store credit if you absolutely love the Shadowlight, that you've already got, you know. If you want to win that, go write us a review. We will leave this open so that you'll be able to write the review until we release the pre-sale, which is going to be likely in about a month from the time of this going live. So
you're not going to want to wait long. This giveaway window isn't going to be open for, like Tayson said, more than a month. By the time you hear this podcast, maybe even less. So go ahead, leave us a review on the podcast, and you'll automatically be in.
If you want to be safe, get it done in April, is what I would say. Make sure you write the review in April. So, okay, there you have it. If you want to win a CS40, go leave us a review on the podcast. Again, this is the Live Ultralight podcast, and we will be extremely appreciative of that, and hopefully you'll be the winner. So, okay, any other last comments on anything related to the backstory or general concepts of the CS40 backpack.
We're sorry for not giving you details, but we will, promise.
This is just part of the fun and games. You guys will drum up some of the details yourself. I'm excited to hear, just read some of the comments on what you guys think. In fact, with that, if you didn't know, we do publish these podcasts on YouTube. So if you do want to jump over to YouTube, you'll be able to leave a comment on that video. So if you want to maybe jump over there and leave some comments on what you think is coming, I'll be interested to read the comments there. If you've got any direct questions that you want to reach out to us you can email us at the liveultralightpodcast@gmail.com. You can go to Outdoor Vitals website and open up a chat where you could talk to us there. And any questions like that, we will document, either reply back to you or answer on a future podcast. So please reach out with any questions. We already talked about leaving a review, so go get that done. Get entered into the giveaway. Make sure you are subscribed, and we'll see you guys on a future episode.